All right, hello everyone. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about the TikTok navigation feature, this particular TikTok navigation feature, and essentially how we can recreate it. So if you spend any sort of amount of time inside the TikTok profile page, you'll notice that there's this little hamburger icon here, and then when you click it, you get this modal that pops up. Now, and you get this nice sort of like cover on the page. Now, essentially what we've done is we've recreated like this. I'm on my subscriptions page in my app, and then I click this, and then you can see it pops up, same thing. Click off it, comes down, click again, and then you can click so any sort of navigation. Now, as you can see, we're not going to be recreating a one-to-one recreation, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to essentially, recreate the basics of it, right? So again, we click off it, nice. So let me just close that here. We'll stop the app. We'll close the emulator like this, and we go ahead, we'll just talk about it. Now, I just want to say right off the start, we're not going to be doing any sort of live coding. We're just going to talk through the code I already have. And then, but actually at the end, we're going to do a little bit of code refactoring. So with that being said, let's just jump right into it. So inside the code, we really have two main sections of this Jetpack Compose code that we need to talk about. We have the scaffold, and then on top of that, we have this modal bottom sheet layout. Now, the scaffold is really nice because what the scaffold does, it provides us with a pre-built and convenient screen patterns, which is really nice because as you notice, if you use a bunch of apps, you'll notice that relatively they all have the same navigation structure, more or less, right? So with the scaffold, all we really have to do is we have to worry about this top bar, and then inside the top bar, this navigation icon. Now the top bar, this is again pre-built. So in this top bar, we're just providing it the title, again, subscriptions, because I'm on my subscription page, and this navigation icon, this menu here, we're doing a icon button, and that gives us the on click. As you can see, we have this scope.launch, this bottom modal state.show, which is right here. Now, I'm not going to talk much about that right now. We'll talk about that in a little bit later, but just know that this is asynchronous, so we have to use this scope.launch to create a coroutine, and then we can run this function. Now, with that being said, we have then inside this icon button to get the nice little hamburger, we use that menu. And again, if this top bar doesn't fit your needs, it fits mine within my app. Say if you wanted this on the other side, you can actually recreate your own. The only thing that this has to be within the scaffold is just a composable. And actually, if I go in my main view here, you can see I've created my own custom top bar. And what this really is it's just this search text, which is again a custom composable that I made. What this really is this is a search icon, this is a search text, and then it's a lazy row, and we have some chips that we're able to scroll through. I'll leave a link down in the description below to my GitHub if you want to go ahead and look through the code. But essentially, yeah, this top bar here, it doesn't have to be pre-built, and you can build your own, and it's really not too difficult. Right, so that being said, we have the scaffold here. The next thing we need to talk about, what is the actual that's modal that's popping up and what's causing the screen to darken, is this modal bottom sheet layout. Now this section has this composable, I guess, has really three main sections that we need to talk about. The first one being the state, which is this bottom modal state here. As you can see, this is what we've created here. As you can see, we have this remember modal bottom sheet state. Now what this does is this allows us to remember the state throughout recompositions. Then we also have this, so we set the initial state, and we have we're setting it to hidden. Now technically there's three states, there's hidden, there's shown, and then there's half. Now what half means is just it's halfway up your screen. Now, we start the initial state to hidden. Now, by saying the skip half expanded equal to true, we're saying we don't want to see that half section of all. If you set this to false, what this means is that if what's going to be shown in your modal is larger than half, then it's not going to show the whole thing. It's only going to pop halfway up the screen. So we're saying we don't even want to see that half state. We just want it to either be hidden or shown. Right, so with that being said, right when we're inside this on click button here, when we go bottom modal state.show, what we're saying is go from that hidden state to that show state. Right, so then the next section is the sheet content. Now this is what's getting shown to the user inside that modal, right? We'll talk about this again, can be any composable. We'll talk about what I created in just a second. But then this third section here, this is what's getting covered by the modal itself, right? This is what is going to be covered by that sort of dark screen that we saw. Now, this is important because notice how this is inside the modal, or notice how this modal bottom screen layout is inside the scaffold. Now, this doesn't really change too much interactions, but it would if you noticed inside the scaffold, right? If you had a bottom bar here. Now, bottom bar is used fairly regularly for some sort of bottom navigation, right? If you had something like that, and if you implemented the bottom sheet layout like we have now, it would look really odd, and the modal would come up on top, and it wouldn't give the same look, the desired look, right? So if you had a bottom bar and you wanted this modal to cover it, what you'd actually have to do is we could just copy this modal. So we copy like that, we could delete it, and then we go above the scaffold. We just paste this above the scaffold. Then we take our tab screen, or what's shown inside our modal. We can copy it, we can delete it, and then we put it inside of our scaffold. Then we take the entire scaffold, we can copy it here, we delete it, and then we put it inside that modal bottom sheet layout. Now, by doing this, we're saying that nice dark screen in our modal, we want it to cover everything on the screen. So no matter what we have, that dark screen and the modal is going to cover it. So you would generally want to do this if you had a bottom bar set, but I don't have a bottom bar set, a bottom bar within the scaffold, if you have that set. But since I don't have that, I don't really need to. I could leave it like that, but inside the scaffold is fine enough, so I'm going to leave it like that. Now let's talk a little bit about this modal contents, right? What I've actually done is just a composable, right? It's a basic box. Now, if you wanted your modal to be a specific height, you would actually manipulate the box here. You could do it just with height, right? Height, we could say it's 400.dp, but by not defining that, we're actually letting the lazy vertical grid define the height, which is actually a little more flexible in this situation. As you can see here, we have our lazy vertical grid. We set the columns to this adaptive size, the minimum size here. And then inside the items here, what we're going to have to do is we provide this nav items list. As you can see, that's what we've made up here. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a second. But then inside that, right, you can see through this nav items, we're accessing the navigation destination here. We're accessing the icon, the content description, and the title. Right, so now let's talk about this list here. Now through this list here, you can see we're doing modal navigation. Now this modal navigation here, we're having a bunch of essentially data classes, right? We're doing a list of data classes. Now data classes are really nice because they're classes which, well, strictly speaking, just hold data. So that's really awesome here. It's essentially anytime you have a bunch of items which are relatively do the same thing, like navigation icons, but their inner workings are just slightly different. So again, we can go ahead and you can see we just define it here. We say we have a title, a content description, a navigation destination, an icon, and a key. Now notice here, you can see that I'm using this r.id action subscription fragment to settings fragment. So you'll notice that I'm using subscription, or you notice that I'm using a fragment navigation. Now, if you are using the much newer, and there's a good chance you probably are, Jetpack Compose's navigation, this navigation destination here, this would just be your string. So let's say if you're going to a settings page, it would be your settings, And then inside your navigation function here, you would just pass. See, we can actually go to the modal content here. You would just pass whatever your navigation is, the navigation function for the Jetpack Compose. Right, now, one last thing I just want to talk about real quick is we can do a quick little bit of a refactor here. We can actually take all this here. We can delete it, we can copy it, we can delete it. Now inside the presentation, we can create a new folder. So inside our UI layer, inside components, we can go ahead and create a new folder called navigation. Then we can create a new file, again called navigation, switch it over here. We can paste everything here like this. Now, what's really gonna make this more special and more generic and is a bit of a refactor is we're going to do a sealed class. We're going to call that class navigation, and we're going to set a value. We're going to call it nav list, and it is going to be a list of modal navigation. And again, we could do a object. So we're going to create a class here, and we're going to call it modal, and we're going to say it inherits from navigation, and we're going to pass it the nav items. Right now, what the sealed class really is, it's just a very strict hierarchy structure and allows us to organize things a lot better. So essentially what's saying is at compile time, all the subclasses of navigation are known. So as you can see, we're using modal here, so modal is one of them. Now, what this allows us to do, we can actually go ahead and do one more thing. I'm just seeing that we can make this even the names a little more generic. As you can see, this says modal navigation, but say we wanted to do navigation items, because most navigation is going to be the same here. Navigation items. There's spelt it wrong. And then we go ahead and we'll just change the names. We'll just change the names here. Let's change the names again. And then lastly, we'll call this modal items. Modal items, right? And then this again will just be modal items. Now, the way that this actually works and what we're able to do is to make this, a better refactor is the fact that we're using this sealed class here and we're using a single file. That means anytime you need to update, say these modal navigations, right? All you have to do is just copy, put in a comma here, and then paste. If this is going to be profile, and then you say navigate to profile screen, and then again you would change this to whatever the navigation destination would be. We'd say home. Is there a profile icon? There's not, but there's propane. Good enough. And then we can change this key to 2. And then you can see it gets updated automatically, right? So that means anywhere we would use this navigation class, it would get updated for us. And actually, so we could go ahead and we could use this navigation class. So we could go back to where we have our modal contents, and we could say navigation. I think we have to import it here. Do we? Navigation, yes, we could do that. And then we have to do dot modal, and then we do that nav list, and then everything else should be the same here. Should get rid. Let's just give it a second here. Yep, there we go. So everything still works the same. So when this really shines through is, let's say we had a top bar navigation, right? So we just go ahead and delete this here. And let's say we had a top bar navigation, right? So we could go ahead, we could put in a new list, and we'll just call this top bar, bar items. And then we go ahead and do top bar, do camel casing there. So then we'd have another one, right? We say object, top bar navigation, and then we could do top bar items, right? So as you can see, what this is really easy is it allows us to define essentially a sealed navigation class, and then inside of it, we have these nested modal and top bar class. So that means anytime, anywhere, if we're going to use any sort of navigation classes, we'd store all the navigation inside one file. That means anytime us or another user has to, edit or add any sort of navigation, as long as we have it in in using this DSL language, right, where it loops through everything, it'll get updated automatically. All the stylings will be the same. All we have to do is just change or add a single item like that. So we can just go ahead and delete this because we're not going to be using it, right? But with that being said, doing all this, that's what gives us the that TikTok-like animation, right? The main thing that's really doing it for us is this modal bottom sheet layout. It's really nice. I really like it. That's all for today. Thank you, and I will see you in the next one.